Welcome to the Kerrville Bible Church Pastors Podcast, where we seek to encourage and equip you in your walk with Christ by exploring a variety of biblical and theological topics. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to learn how you can submit a question for us to answer on the podcast. Welcome back to the Kerrville Bible Church Pastors Podcast. My name is Toby Baxley. I am your host. I'm joined, as always, by Murray Van Gundy, Chris McKnight, Scott Christensen, and we're going to take up one of your questions today. It's actually a question that just came in yesterday and was added to our podcast list. So
I'm glad you put it up.
Right here on the heels of a pretty convicting sermon by our elder Thad Chambers on marriage, we had someone write in and ask about the passage in Ephesians 5, starting in verse 25. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself up for her, so that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. And I'll go on, that he might present to himself the church in all her glory, having no spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she would be holy and blameless. So the question was, how does this play out at home? How does this play out in our homes? All right. Ready, set, go. Yes, please, all at once.
Well, first, the context is Jesus talking, Paul's talking about Jesus sanctifying her, the church, cleansing her by the washing of the water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor. And then so I would say the first thing we've got to talk about is what that means to the church. What was Jesus doing to the church, the setting apart for the church, his righteousness being clothed on us as believers, and I think what that looks like. Then we can talk about what does that look like for the husband to his wife. Mm-hmm. That'd be my first 2 cents.
Right. So there's a number of interpretive issues here because, first of all, Paul begins verse 25 with a command to husbands to love their wives. And then he draws a parallel to Christ, just as Christ. So in other words, we're to love our wives just like Christ loved the church. So he's the model for the sort of love that husbands are to have for their wives. So then Paul goes on to explain, well, how did Christ love the church? Well, he gave himself up for her so that he might sanctify her, and having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he may present to himself the church in all her glory, so forth. So there's something about the way that Christ loves the church, that we're to love our wives. And, of course, when you look at the broader context of this passage, really, Paul says, I'm not even really talking about husbands and wives. I'm really talking about the church. And so there's a sense in which, the relationship between husbands and wives is just simply a picture of Christ's love for his bride, the church. And so there's just a lot of rich sort of theology here. But I think we need to be careful that in interpreting this, that we're not saying that husbands love their wives in precisely the same way that Paul's describing Christ's love for the church, because it's a redemptive love, it's a salvific love that he is describing here. And so we in no way save our wives in the way that Christ saves the church. But I do think that there is something about Christ's self-sacrificial love, that has a redemptive and salvific value to it that is helpful for us to think through in terms of how we love our wives. And there's probably deeper stuff there. And Chris has really got his wheels
scratching his forehead.
I just want to defer to my sermon on Ephesians 5 whenever I preached that 10 years ago. I think this can be twisted and misinterpreted sometimes. I think, it says that Christ cleansed us, his bride, his wife, by the washing of water with the word. It doesn't explicitly say that we're supposed to do that to our wives.
Right. Which is what usually it's the go-to, right? It's the go-to in a marital counseling setting of husbands, you need to, and that's really
there's no command there. It doesn't explicitly say that.
Right.
And as you keep reading, it's so husbands ought to love their own wives as their own bodies. And it goes down that path. So I think this is one of those verses that can be misused and abused by overly patriarchal settings of men kind of beating their wives with the word of God, like going way overboard with this, like launching off of this and going, man, it's my task every day to wash you with the word. And I'm just not sure that that's what this verse is saying. It's saying that Christ has washed us. Mm-hmm. We have been cleansed by the washing of water with the word, which is a whole interpretive challenge in and of itself.
Yes, then we get into
that's a whole other
baptism,
whole other podcast. But that's what Jesus has done for his bride. Is there an analogy here? Is there a comparison? Well, I would say as brother and sister in Christ, as a one flesh union, as a man and a woman who are equal in the eyes of God in a covenant of marriage, that we can be washing each other with the word of God, both spoken and lived out. I guess I would want to say, because I just have seen so much misuse of this kind of stuff and abuse, I would want to just say to fellow husbands, be more concerned about your example than about your words, and let the words come later. But the example's the main thing. And, this can look like, you could be washing your wife with a compassionate hug, or it could be honey, I need to talk to you about something. I think it could be the whole range of that, because all of that could be Christ-likeness. We all readily admit how much we fail in loving our wives as Christ loved the church, sacrificially, giving up of ourselves, all these things. That's what he died for us. He gave up of himself to the max, and that's the model. I don't know that it means we're constantly watching our wives' lives like the Holy Spirit and going, I got a verse for you today. Here's what you need to be thinking about in your Christian life today, because this is my job,
Yeah, I think you hit it right there, is that a lot of men will use the Bible as a weapon, under the kind of the auspices of washing her with the word, not even maybe even caring that the he in verse 26 is not him, the husband, it's him, Christ, and that the husband will use the Bible as a weapon, but if he doesn't back up and says Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, the husband's not going to give himself up for his wife. He's not giving of himself. It's everything is like, you're the problem, and I'm here to fix you, and I'm going to use the Bible as a hammer to do it.
Right, and I can definitely say I've been guilty of that in my marriage, and probably was guilty of it early on in the marriage, and maybe even the first 10 years, of trying to make my wife into my own image. Let me make her like me. I can see your flaws because they're my weak. They're my strengths, and so it's very obvious to me what you need. And so and just how flawed that is, how wrongheaded that is. As God made her who she is, with her gifts and her abilities, and what I should be doing as a husband is helping her discover that and to flourish in that, and to give her an environment where she can flourish as to who she is, and with my love, support, and guidance, And then if either one of us get out of line, it's the obligation of the other to correct each other. In
a Christ-like way. It's how would Christ have done it? How would the Pharisees correct somebody, and how would Christ correct somebody, right? And that's a misuse of the law, right? They would misuse the law to correct somebody, versus like the extreme you're talking about, Chris, of husbands who do that. It's a weapon that you said, Toby. It's a beating over the head kind of attitude, and it you have that extreme, but then you have the extreme of no washing with the word, if you will, or no living out the word. And I think the key is living out the word you almost aren't going to need to say much. You live it out. There might be some pockets of time throughout your marriage where you're going to speak the word. It's actually going to be, hey, let's get in the word. But I think then even in Scott's 3-part series on parenting of being in the word, and it's just kind of part of a habit of our family, we're kind of in the word. Then the wife she's an equal in the let's being in the word. It's not a, hey, I have a word for you from the Lord. It's we're just in the word. Maybe it's, I've known of couples that have had just amazing devotional lives together. Mm-hmm. Katie and I have tried. Let me tell you, we have tried. We're like, okay, we're setting the alarm. We're getting up at 6:30. We're going to have the pot of coffee ready to go. We're going to go through. We'll last. I think our biggest stint was maybe 2 months.
Oh wow!
Like we lasted 2 months.
That's
2
pretty
months.
good.
Yeah, of like doing our Devo together.
Yeah.
But wow, was it hard? It was super hard. So it looks different for people, but I think it comes down to. Because he says he's addressing husbands in the same way husbands should love their wives as they love their own bodies. So just husbands, look at yourself and how much do you truly love yourself? And if we're going to be honest, you love yourself a lot, right? We love ourselves a lot. Now, how do we take that and love our wives?
Right.
As much as if we could, right?
Yeah, he goes on in verse 29, it says, no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church. So what does that mean? That means that we should nourish and cherish our wives. There's a clear more of a direct correspondence, I think. Whereas really when you look at the second part of verse 25, where it's describing how Christ loved the church all the way to the end of verse 27 is really kind of parenthetical because the beginning of verse 25 says, love your wives. And then you have this parenthetical statement about how Christ loved the church. And then you have a kind of a sandwich of that command, for husbands to love their wives. And he repeats it in verse 28. So husbands ought also to love their own wives as their own bodies. And so the main command is love here. He's using Christ as an illustration of self-sacrificial love for the church. And I think that's the broad principle there, that just as Christ sacrificed himself, to his love for the church, so husbands need to sacrifice themselves in love for their wives.
So here's a thought too. Even if we go back to the washing of the water with the word, and we say, okay, we're going to grant that, we're going to give you that. I think the strongest argument there for the word would be gospel, not law.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to wash your wife with something, wash her with the gospel.
Yeah.
Remind her that God loves her. Mm-hmm. Remind her that she's a child of God. Remind her that she's forgiven. Remind her that of the greatness of the gospel. Wash her with that, when she's crying on your shoulder or stressed out about something or whatever. If you want to go off of that verse, that's what Paul's talking about in the context. That's the word here.
Right.
Because the gospel happens in the parenthetical statement.
The message. That's
the gospel.
So,
that's really good. I think that's a go ahead.
Finish.
I just think that's really good.
Okay, good.
Said, Scott.
That's really good.
I'm Chris. That's Scott.
Sorry. What you said, Chris, that was really good.
But he's Scott.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I haven't mentioned him in a while, but Tim Keller has had a 9-part sermon series on these 11 verses. Wow. And I've actually listened to it probably 2 or 3 times. And I think one of the pitfalls in people who take this kind of hyper literally and say, I as the husband have to wash you, wife, with the word, is I have to be looking at you and see your faults. Right. And see, so here's law. That's the law, right? I have to look for things that are wrong and how the Bible addresses the things that are wrong.
Yes.
And really, that's even the wrong view of marriage.
Right.
What marriage is, a good marriage, and Keller points this out, and I think he borrows it from C.S. Lewis because, everything Keller said that was good was borrowed from somebody else. But, erotic love is 2 people looking at each other, right? And But a great marriage is a friendship at the core, is a good friendship at the core. And a friendship at the core is two people standing side by side looking at a common horizon. And he points out that common horizon is our glorification. And so when we're washing one another with the water, with the water through the word, we are putting our arms around one another and say, look at Jesus.
That's where we're headed.
Yeah. Look, Hebrews 12, let's fix our eyes on Jesus. This is hard, yes. And things are, we're struggling right now, but let's fix our eyes on Jesus, who the author and perfecter. I think that's where the success of our marriage lies.
I know my marriage needs more of that.
Yeah,
I'll confess.
Well, in the gospel, if I were so inclined to speak the word to my wife in a quote unquote washing her with the word, should be the gospel. Hey, you know what? I know you're anxious about this. God loves you. There's a redemptive plan in this, that God forgives you. God's grace. You know what I mean? Instead of a hammer. Yep. And the three words that give. We were talking about wisdom in our Devo time, but he says, husbands, love your wives. The word love we know is agape, right? It's a sacrificial love. It's a love that in a way is giving, asking nothing in return. It's not, hey, I'll love you if you respect me. It's, I will love you even if you don't respect me. And then he says in 29, nourishes and cherishes, and nourishing could be paralleled to providing. Nourishing our wives would be, I provide. God has built me and equipped me to provide for you.
Right.
I will take care of you. Not to say that you shouldn't have a career and that you can be a provider as well, but that's my role. I will provide. I want you to know. I want you to know that I will provide for you. And cherish is protection. That I will protect you. That I will provide for you and I will protect you. Does that not change the paradigm of this legalistic type marriage?
That's right.
Or a just usurping of your responsibility marriage as a husband, right?
Yeah, that's where all of that comes from, right? We are the primary provider and protector, and she can play a role. She can carry a weapon, and she can have a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the end of the day, that's our job.
Yeah.
And so that's. And then she has freedom to do those things if she wants to.
And peace and rest in that.
Yeah, that's right. One of those words also, I forget which one it is in the original, but it means to warm. One of those words carries the connotation of warming someone, holding someone, even a physical warming of body upon body. I forget which
Thad quoted, of Ecclesiastes.
That's right.
How does one stay warm by themselves, two people.
Two are better than one. That's right.
Two are better than one.
Let me share an illustration that I've used often in marriage counseling. It seems to resonate. People remember it, and it seems to convict and connect and all those things. Because I've seen this over and over. I've seen a Christian couple come, and the wife is kind of been terrorized and beat down, and the husband has kind of living an excessively righteous life, or has taken this verse and twisted it and misused it and whatever, or it might just be pure sin and just flesh and selfishness. The analogy is, wife is like a turtle who's been beat on so many times that it's not going to come out of the shell anymore. It's like every time I come out of my shell of protection, I get whacked. Anytime the soft tissue comes out, the head, the neck, the arm, something bad happens to me. So over time, when the wife just keeps getting whacked, and it's like the turtle hides and withdraws and hides in that shell. I'm not coming out anymore. And I've seen that. I've been guilty of it, and I know I've seen this where even under the auspices of being spiritual and godly, men have done this to their wives. And it's the opposite of nourish and cherish. Where she is out and feels safe, and that's when you get all into the man initiates and the wife responds. And if there's no responding ever, something's wrong with your initiating, because God built her and made her to be a responder. And if that's gone, then husband, look within. Don't blame her. Look at yourself, because you've done something to take that away.
I had this is a good illustration of that. It's great. So it's an old pastor from a church that I was at. I won't name names, but he, in the first 10 years of their marriage, it was contentious, and he was in ministry. He was a pastor, but it was contentious. And she wasn't, she had a rough childhood. She was not having it. And he said, he was obviously convicted of how to love his wife. And so what he decided to do is every morning he would make her breakfast. He would make pancakes, eggs, bacon, and he would set it in front of her. And she'd stand up, she'd scrape it off and throw it in the trash. And the next morning he'd get up, he'd make her breakfast. And what happened? He was actively loving her, being disrespected. And then what do you think began to happen? Begin to melt it. She began to eat a little bit of the breakfast. And, so over the course of time.
I thought maybe she wanted something else.
Well, waffle.
I'm allergic to eggs.
Whatever. Yeah, you dummy. Yeah, you dummy. You're only making me what you want. Right. You're going to go in the trash later and eat it. Right. But what happened is it melted those chains of disrespect and discontent and contentiousness, and it really is, men, it is our job to be you love to claim you're the head, love to claim that you were created first, love to claim that you have the role of spiritual leadership and spiritual headship, all this. Well, then if you even claim an ounce of that, you be the initiator of loving your wife, right? Yeah. We need to be the initiator. I'm so guilty of not that, man. I cross my arms and I am right. You have blatantly disrespected me. You are unrepentant of it. You won't turn. So by golly, I will show you. And I cross my arms and, I will hold back love because, and that affection. Is so un-Christ. Hold back affection. Yeah. Right. And it, my wife has said, and we know, the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. And I'm guilty of just being apathetic. Okay, fine. Really? I'll just exist.
Yeah.
We'll just be roommates.
I think this goes back to the nature of love itself, and that the biblical love is an action, it's service, and affection is the feeling. And so if I say I love you, but I'm not serving you, I don't actually love you. I love the way you make me feel. And so biblical love is serving one another.
And it initiates.
It's initiative, and it can melt those. It can melt the heart of stone.
Yeah.
I have notes on verse 29 with the word nourishes and cherishes, and Chris, you said maybe one of those terms has to do with warmth and that sort of thing. Yeah. But I have understood both those terms as almost like mothering type terms. That nourish is a word that's often associated with the mother nursing her baby. And the cherishes is like the kind of tender care that a mother would extend toward her child.
Feeding.
And I find that interesting because when you look at the broad context of this passage, wives are supposed to be subject to the husbands, and husbands are called to be the head of their wives, and so you can turn that around in this sort of patriarchal, I'm leading my wife in this hard manner. But it's almost like Paul anticipates the wrong interpretation of that by throwing in these mothering type terms, so men, that feminine side in you has to come out, that mothering, so that you're not treating your wife in this harsh manner.
Yeah, his imperatives are counter-natural.
Yeah. Right. Feeding and protecting, feeding and cherishing, feeding and
nourishing and
holding gently. Yeah, all those things. I want to just, while we're on this passage and on the subject, I think one other point that needs to be made is the command of the husband is made to the husband, and the command of the wife is made to the wife. Meaning, husbands, you don't tell your wives to submit to you.
Yeah.
God tells them to do that. That's between them and God. Just as wives, don't tell your husbands to love you. God tells them to love you. That's between them and God. He's not telling the wives to submit to their husbands through the husband. He's directly addressing the wife.
Yeah.
In other words, stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane, and God is speaking to you directly. And so the worst thing a husband can do is try to force his wife to submit to him. Because it's got to come from her own volition. It's her own choice. It's her own obedience before God. You can't make her do anything. You can't make her obey.
Right.
And the very obey is counterintuitive. It's a contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
Because if you're obeying under being made to,
under duress,
it's not obedience.
Yeah.
So do you even want that? So I just think it's so critical. We just say, I got to draw a circle around myself, stay in my silo. All that I'm responsible for as a husband is loving my wife. I'm not responsible for her response. She is.
Yeah, one thing that has just come up over and over in marriage counseling, because these are the two roles, right? I mean, you get these right. You work on these. You focus on these. You say, okay, this is my loving my wife comes from the Lord. Conviction on my life and all that. Fulfill that role in her. Being respectful comes from the Lord. And how do I do that? This is a recipe for success. It's like God's recipe for a successful marriage. If every single married couple or those who are engaged want to know, what's the recipe for a successful marriage? Well, here you go. And it is as plain as day. And when you do that, we've all experienced this. When we are fulfilling our roles, man, there's harmony. Is there not?
Yes.
There's this overlapping, the circles of love and respect, they overlap. And it's just like, wow, this is awesome. But boy, as soon as one breaks down and then the other breaks down, those circles go further and further apart. Yeah. And you need rescuing. And so hopefully that rescuing happens quickly, and it's conviction of the Lord. The husband leads out and starts fulfilling, man, I've got to do what I'm supposed to. I can't even worry about what she's doing. I have enough on my own plate, right, to do this. But one thing super practical that has, I think, helped marriages and some counseling, it's helped me, it's helped my wife, it's helped us when we've counseled others, is literally, lots of times we've all done this where we're having to counsel somebody in crisis. Mm-hmm. It's a crisis mode. And I said, listen, we go to this passage. This is what it says. This is kind of what it looks like. Now, how about you go home and, wife, write down top 5 ways that you can be loved, that you receive love, that your husband can love you. What are the top 5 ways? And then husband, write top 5 ways that you receive respect, that she can respect you. Like, what is that? Like, don't just say, because my wife has said this, we've said this stuff. She goes, Murray, I know what the Bible says, but I don't know how. Like, what do you mean this is how, what do you mean you need to be respected? What does that look like? So really 5 practical ways, and then just work on one of those. You say, okay, well, she says, this is how I receive love is when you come home, give me a kiss. When you come home, be willing to do the dish, whatever it is, right? And then for us, it might be when I'm starting to say something, don't correct me, let me fail. Let me fail. Let me just work out my own thing and let me fail on that because I'm a man, whatever it is, right? You list your top 3, top 5 ways, and I'm telling you, it's just super. It's very practical. And then you just exercise them.
When I spend 3 hours mowing the yard, trimming, blowing off the grass, making it look beautiful, please notice.
There you go. Please just say, pat me on the back, right? Pat me on the back and tell me how great
all you have to, the yard looks nice. That's all you have to say. So, hi, honey. I love you.
Yard looks nice.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that. That's very practical because that's unique to each person. Everybody's list is different, and that's the nature of marriage. So.
Yeah. Oh. Last point, you tried devotions with Katie. Lasted 2 months. You guys?
We do our own thing because of me. I mean, I'm just such a hermit, and it's a burden of my existence on this planet. But I just.
Did you ever try it? Did you guys ever say, "Hey, let's do"?
Yeah, we've tried and done a little bit of everything over the years. But our routine now is I'm in my room and with the door closed with my Bible, and she's out on the couch with her Bible and whatever she's reading, and that's all on me because I that's how I think, that's how I process, that's how I. And then we just live life together, and we talk about everything. And hopefully the Bible is
Part of that.
is informing all of those things that we're talking about and doing. But as far as are we sitting down and reading something together and then talking about it? We don't. We're doing that individually. And should it change? Probably so. But it's just, gosh, I just feel like, I don't know. I am such a private person. I am so private that I have to face away from my wife to sleep. I joke with this. We were with our kids. We were in a hotel, and we're all going to be in a hotel room. I said, I've got to have that one over there because I got to face the wall because I got to feel like nobody else is in this room, or I will not be able to sleep. I guess
That's how you're made,
I must
right?
be autistic or something. When I was 4 years old, I shared a room with my older brother. He's 4 years older, and I was 4 years old, and I wanted out.
Yeah.
He didn't want me out.
Yeah.
He didn't want me to leave. I wanted my own bedroom. I wanted to be by myself, and I asked to do that at like 4.
Yeah, that's funny. Real quick, so this devotional thing for us was another pastor at this church, and him and his wife had a breakthrough in their marriage, and they had been doing this for like 20 years. Uh-huh. So they show up. He tells me about it. I was like, man, this is awesome. They both of them show up at our front door with 2 coffee mugs, a pound of coffee, and a devotional for us to start on this journey. So we're like, all right, this is great. This is going to be the greatest marriage ever, 2 months. 2 months. But anyway.
Yeah, no.
Oh,
Scott?
No. I'm probably more like Chris. If my wife and I did devotions, it would always turn into me doing a sermon.
Teaching. You'd be teaching now.
And she would
We're
be
actually
like,
loving them well by
So
we're like, let me tell you what this says.
Yeah.
And what this means.
No, we do pray together. We do try to regularly pray together. And, but we don't do devotions like couples devotions. Now we do family devotions, and we have a regular schedule that we do that
because Matthew doesn't have a choice. He has to listen.
He has to listen. He doesn't have a choice, and
still in the micromanaged.
So
stage.
he gets the sermon, but no. Actually, we do devotions differently than that. But in terms of just everyday conversation, we're always talking about Scripture, and talking about our relationship with Christ, in normal conversation.
I don't know how Melissa and I got into this. It wasn't, I don't think it was something intentional. It was just sort of like, as at some point, 2 metronomes going at different tempos will overlap at times, and so we're currently overlapping. And I actually have enjoyed it to the point where I manage my morning schedule so that we can have our devotions at the same time. We're not doing the same. We're not doing the same thing, and we're not really even talking about it that much. We're just sitting opposite each other on the couch, on 2 different couches, reading our own thing, and then I'll say something, and she'll say, "Yeah, I read that a week ago," because she reads faster than I do. But we'll have a conversation about it. We had a conversation this morning about Judges, and I was talking about the generation that came up that didn't know the Lord, and we had a whole conversation about that, and she's already reading about Gideon. So, I was thinking they didn't know the Lord because their parents didn't tell them. And she said, actually, they did, but they didn't listen. So, we have that's kind of our devotion time where we're there at the same time and we just share with each other what we're reading, but it's not actually anything together.
Yeah, I think the principle there is that no matter how you do your devotional life and interact with your wife, that you just need to have biblical conversations with your spouse.
Yeah. It's really, as we grow in the Lord, all of these things, these spiritual disciplines, become less of what we do and more of who we are.
Yes.
And there's actions, obviously, you have to sit down and read your word to be in the word. It doesn't just kind of come, right? But it really is just an overflow so that you are having conversations.
Yeah, you're creating a biblical culture in your home and in your marriage.
Part of the DNA, if you will.
I really like the term, instead of spiritual disciplines, I like the term habits of grace, because you don't have to think about a habit. You just do it, and that's what it becomes. It may start as discipline, but then it becomes a habit, and it's something that is just ingrained in our DNA. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, I hope this was helpful to you, and we'll, Lord willing, be back with another episode next Wednesday.
Hey, we need some more.
Need more of those
podcast
topics.
list, yeah, because
We
I
love
was going through last night, thumbing through it before I sent to you guys, and
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm always
Send
thinking
us
as I'm
those
going through
questions.
it, I'm always thinking Chris is going to say that's a terrible one. Chris is gonna say- but then I the buffer is I get to say, hey, it was from the podcast topics. I didn't come up with it. It was on the topics.
So send us your podcast topics and questions so that we can keep doing this stuff.
That's right. That's good.
Murray, close
All right.
us in prayer.
Yes, Lord, thank you for this time together. Thank you for getting to chew on this passage and what it means and what it doesn't mean, and just as husbands, how we absolutely imperatively are called to love our wives with a sacrificial love and to nourish them and cherish them, and that absolutely includes the Word of God, but it's really living out the Word and even proclaiming the gospel, loving them with the gospel. Lord, so I pray this is edifying to our listeners. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks for listening to the Kerrville Bible Church Pastors Podcast. We want to be a resource for you and answer the biblical, theological, or pastoral questions that you may have. Send them to us via email at questions@kerrvillebiblechurch.org or leave us a text or voicemail at 830-321-0349.